Welcome, everybody, to the latest live edition, and sadly, the final in-season, even though the Guardians season is over, the baseball season continues with the World Series edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Zach, you will not be going to New York, but the Yankees are playing the Dodgers, and I know you're excited that Major League Baseball and the TV networks got everything they wanted, right?
Well, when we're making our preseason predictions in spring training, I know we're just sitting here like thinking, how can we give Rob Manfred a nice early Christmas present? And this is it. Judge Ohtani. How exciting.
He certainly is. I was a little quick on the button there on the Ultimate Guardians Open. But nonetheless, there it is. To be fair, it is an exciting World Series. I mean, if you're a baseball fan and you're not, if you take your emotions out of it, which is almost impossible, but it is a sexy matchup. I know I'll be rooting for the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are going to win. I think these teams are pretty close. It certainly could go either way. Dodgers do have home field advantage. So before we get to the Guardians, what do you think? Who do you think is going to win? You're out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Can I say something controversial?
Please. We love that.
These teams are very flawed. Like it's Yankees, it's Dodgers, it's billions of dollars. It's hard for me to predict because the Dodgers have just been like patching together their pitching since July.
Yeah.
And we just saw the Yankees, and if Judge, Soto, and Stanton keep crushing home runs like that, which they could, then I like their chances. But their bullpen has like one guy I think I would trust, and that's Luke Weaver. So I don't know. I think it'll probably go far. I think MLB, why stop at just Dodgers-Yankees? Give us a 7-game Dodgers-Yankees classic where it's Ohtani hitting a walk-off home run or something.
Yeah, right. It's both teams have 3 superstar, borderline all-star, maybe Hall of Fame, borderline Hall of Fame. Although Freddie Freeman he's a mess right now. He's very injured. He probably shouldn't be playing at all. Wasn't even in the lineup yesterday, but you have Ohtani, Betts, and then maybe Freeman against Judge, Stanton, and Soto. It's whatever. We're not a part of it, so we'll keep it moving. As for the Guardians, of course, the season comes to an end. Listen, the 3 games in Cleveland were the only 3 good games of the LCS period, because all of the Mets-Dodgers games were completely one-sided. The first 2 games of the Guardian series weren't very good, but the 3 games in Cleveland were amazing. Unfortunately, the Guardians again on Saturday night come up short. They blow the 2-0 lead, and they lose in 10 innings on the Juan Soto home run. But as you alluded to just a few minutes ago, the Yankees superstars rose to the occasion. Judge, Soto, Stanton were all fantastic in the series. And Ramirez, Naylor, and Clase were not. And that was the biggest difference.
Those guys hit 9 home runs in 5 games. That's absurd. That's it was 4-1, which you'll look back years from now and just see those numbers and say, oh, must not have been very competitive. And those 3 games in Cleveland, man, they could have swung either way so many different times. It could have been a sweep.
Sure.
And Guardians had no business winning game 3. The Guardians had plenty of business possibly winning games 4 and 5. So it was, those 3 games were just pressure packed. It was, every pitch was dripping with intrigue, and it was fun. I mean, I know Guardians fans right now are not thrilled and probably don't want to rehash the memories of what happened over the last week, but man, those 3 games were a perfect encapsulation of playoff baseball. And I also think there's not a ton. I understand there's the payrolls, et cetera, whatever. There's not a ton separating these teams. I mean, the Guardians hung right there with them, and they just made mistakes to the wrong people. Now, those wrong people are the difference between these teams here.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, the reason why Soto's going to get some astronomical number in free agency this winter is because you cannot, it's not even that you can't make a mistake to him, but you can't really pitch to him. And on the Guardians side, who fits that description. Jose Ramirez usually, but not this month.
No.
And that's it. So, that's the difference. But it's a lot to process.
Yeah.
It's I think overall, and tell me how you feel, but no one saw this team going as far as they did. No one saw them winning as much as they did. And at the same time, when you get that close, there's of course going to be disappointment. There's of course going to be frustration. When it's been 76 years, of course there's going to be disappointment and frustration. And when you lose to the team that is always the team that's knocking you out, 2017, 2020, 2022, 2024, there's going to be disappointment and frustration. So how do you sort through all that? How do you process the whole season?
So it's a great question. And I'll use an example from my personal experience, right? And I I'm not saying this is going to happen with the Guardians. Let's hope it does. But the Cubs had been really bad in the early 2010s. And in 2015, kind of a year before schedule, they were really good. And I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop on that team, and it didn't happen. They just kept playing well. They ended up getting into the wild card. They won 98 games that year, but they were third in the Central. But that was the wild card. And then I remember going to the wild card game in Pittsburgh, and they won that. And then eventually they got to the NLCS and played the Mets, and then they just got smoked in that series, even though they had beaten the Mets 7 out of 7 in the regular season that year. And at the end of and at that time, obviously the Cubs hadn't won a World Series. So in my lifetime. So at the end of the 2015 season, when it first ended, I was like, oh God, we sucked so bad in that series. And the Guardians obviously played better against the Yankees than the Cubs did against the Mets, but I was so bummed. But honestly, after a couple of days of like calming down off that loss, I said, man, what a fun season that was. It was great. It was unexpected. When you have the unexpected good season, that's better than anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the Dodgers and the Yankees as a fan, yeah, it's fun to be a fan of those teams because they win a lot, but you can't enjoy the ride, I don't think, with those teams because you have such high expectations that whoever loses this World Series, their fan base is not going to think of this as a good season.
Right.
And I'm sure there were some Guardians fans that will say, this is not a good season. We didn't accomplish the ultimate goal. But I think the majority of fans will be like I felt in 2015. Pissed off and sad, and we could have done this and we could have done that. But when you look at the ride we had, and certainly the people that have been fans their whole lives, it was a fun ride. People were into this team from the beginning, unlike a lot of the good years with Terry Francona, where they got off to bad starts and then turned it on. This team got off to a great start. And so the attendance was the best it's been in a long time. And hopefully that trend will continue. Now, maybe it's going to take some time because people might not. But next year, there's going to be expectations. So the buy-in, especially if they get off to a bad start, is not going to be exactly the same. Even if they get off to a good start, there's going to be some people who are like, well, we're just going to lose to the Yankees in the playoffs again.
Yeah.
The only thing that could change that is spending money, which we'll get to later. But so, the Cubs ended up winning the World Series, obviously, the next year. Who knows if the Guardians will be able to do that. I still think in this great season, if you look at how well they played, like if you look at the whole season, yes, certainly Stephen Kwan and David Fry overachieved in the first half, to some degree. Well, certainly David Fry. But if you look at the entire season as individual players, there wasn't a lot of overachievement. Certainly in the bullpen, potentially. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Kate Smith's career is going to be or Hunter Gaddis's career is going to be or Tim Herron. Maybe those guys won't be great relievers every year. Bullpens are very fickle, and you never know from season to season. But outside of, and so I won't even say those are overachievements because I don't know. Those guys are all rookies. But the rest of the team, like who overachieved? So it's not like you can say, well, this half the team overachieved. They're not going to do that again next year. Well, that wasn't the case. There's a lot of guys that underachieved. Tristan McKenzie, season was a disaster. Gavin Williams had a terrible season. Logan Allen. I'm not as high on Logan Allen, obviously, as I am on Gavin Williams and Tristan McKenzie, but he had a terrible season. I'm sure they will add somebody. I'm not overly optimistic they're going to spend a ton of money, but I'm sure they'll add some new faces to this, And so I think what we saw at the end of the year for Brian Rocchio was promising. I think Bo Naylor can be obviously a lot better than he was this year. So I still think this team that won all the games they did, that went as far as they did, has a lot of upside. And maybe they will be like the 2015 Cubs, who surprised one year. The Guardians will have expectations next year, although I don't know that they're for certain going to be the favorites in the division. Obviously, the Tigers and Royals and Twins are all pretty good. We'll see. It'll be mixed, but there'll certainly, from fans, be much higher expectations than there were coming into this season. And maybe which it was the case with the Cubs, obviously, in 2016. And obviously, the Cubs have an advantage of a big payroll. But in 2016, the Cubs payroll was high, but it wasn't like where the Yankees and Red Sox are. Yankees and Mets, obviously not that level. So so it's a long answer, but I would say that, again, I look at the season as a great success that ended in disappointment.
Yeah, it's a long answer because it's so complicated.
Yes.
Because you don't get this in other sports. In the NBA, the journey doesn't matter so much because the playoffs take 2 months, and it's oftentimes the top seeds advancing, and you don't always learn a ton in the regular season. In the NFL, it's once a week.
Right.
And I also feel like the regular season just flies. In baseball, it's every freaking day from really February.
Yeah.
And every team in the spring says, oh, our goal is to win a World Series. And like a handful of those teams actually believe it.
Mm-hmm.
The Guardians were saying those things, and we're all like, yeah, okay, that's nice. You're going to win 77 games.
Right.
And they went on a mission to prove us wrong. And they were right. That they had the potential, that they had the capability. And so the thing about baseball that makes it unique and that makes it just that can make a season like this special is that it is every day. It's your summer, and it just gives you something to look forward to every single day. I don't know. And so when you have that season that feels like you're in the honeymoon phase, you're right. Like that's as good as it gets. You never will get that if you're a Yankees fan, if you're a Dodgers fan.
Right.
Because why do you could have the most incredible win on May 23rd of your season, but that doesn't matter at all because all you care about is what happens on October 30th.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that we should have low expectations or not demand a World Series in Cleveland. You absolutely should. Again, it's been 76 years, but you can still enjoy the ride. Like if you took nothing out of this season, then that's just probably a reflection on you, and I feel bad.
And Zach, I think the fact that the Browns right now are so unlikable and so hard to watch, and I think fans are, especially at this point in the season, so not looking forward to them, it even cements more what the Guardians gave you this summer. And that's not to give the owner a pass for not spending or the players who didn't get it done in the ALCS. I'm not giving them a pass either, but this team gave you a fun summer. It added to whatever you did this summer. It was a major positive addition to it.
I mean, don't the Cavs start like tomorrow or Wednesday? Like it's, it's nice when you can. There's never a dull moment in Cleveland sports. I know that.
No, there is not.
You got to go from talking to me about this to talking about something you probably never thought you'd have to talk about. But it's the key, and you touched on this, is because I don't want to sit here and wax poetic about like it was a great how you like sum that up was great. It was a great season, and it's a disappointing ending. And the key and what we have to talk about moving forward after today's show is you have to build on it.
That's right.
You can't let this. No one's going to look back and be like, man, how about that 2024 season when you're, 30 years from now, if the 2025 season, they go 76 and 86 like they did a year ago.
Right.
No one's going to care. Like we don't sit here and reminisce about 2022.
Nope.
It's that season will get lost. It'll become a footnote. So You have to build on it. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, I don't know. We'll have plenty of payroll discussions
Yeah.
and TV revenue discussions and et cetera. I think you saw in this series, and the reason why, like, you'll never see me tweet like, "Oh, the 4 teams left. Here's the 3 payrolls. Here's
Yeah,
Cleveland's
right.
payroll."
I hate
I
those
don't
tweets.
care. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's You're not hanging a banner because you had a better uh, correlation of money to wins.
Yeah.
It's you see that, like, there's not a humongous gap here. So it doesn't take a $300 million payroll.
No.
And the money they've spent has been spent poorly. You're paying Miles Straw more than most players on your roster, and he spent the year in AAA, and you got him for another 2 years. You're paying Gene Segura to sit on a yacht and um, eat seafood. The money they've spent has not gone well. Like, Josh Bell was a bust. Mike Zunino was a bust. But the issue is you need more flexibility. You can't sign a couple guys, they're busts, and then you're like, "Oh my god, there's nothing we can do,"
Yeah.
and we have to dump their contracts immediately. That's the key. So you have to find ways to improve. You can't just assume that running this back is going to work and end a drought that dates back to the Truman administration. So that's the key, and that's how you keep people excited. That's how you keep people looking forward to next year. And we'll see. In 2016, they
Yeah.
did it. They signed Edwin Encarnacion. People flocked to the ticket windows, and they had a ton of momentum that they carried all offseason going into the
Yep.
2017 season. So they need to do something similar where they just prove to the fans that they are as impatient and desperate to win a title as, the 75-year-old fan sitting at home who's wondering if he's ever going to see one.
Imagine they just like added a power hitting right fielder and a really good starting pitcher. Right? I mean, even if they just did those two things, but I don't mean the bargain basement right fielder and the bargain basement pitcher. Like, go sign, I don't know. I mean, who? All right, let me look at the free agent list.
Juan
Here,
Soto.
well, yeah. Teoscar Hernandez, Anthony Santander. I mean, those guys are both big time power hitters.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be free agency. Like, I'm not going
Make a
to.
trade.
Yeah, that's the key. Can you go trade for someone who's already making some money, who's established? And look, we can sit here and hype up Chase DeLauder and Travis Bazzana and Juan Brito and whoever else might crack this lineup at some point in the next year or so. But the point is, you are in such a good position. The fans showed up all year.
That's
You
right.
got, what, 6 playoff games at home where you packed that stadium?
That's right.
You've got new renovations you're rolling out on opening day that people are going to want to come check out. Like, you're in the honeymoon phase in sports is fleeting. It ends so abruptly, and then it becomes on you to capitalize and to keep fans motivated to cherish your team. And they're in that spot now where everything is set up for them. They've just got to deliver.
And again, nobody's asking them for a $300 million payroll. But how about 150? Is that too much to ask? It shouldn't be.
Probably.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Check out FanDuel.com/UCSS. That's FanDuel.com/UCSS. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's get to some fan comments here, Zach. We got a lot of them. Derek says, "Morning, guys. My buddy's got the Soto home run ball, and the guards, for some reason, wouldn't authenticate the ball for them." Wonder if there's a certain time limit to when they have to get it verified. Soto and his dad wanted the ball. Interesting.
That's weird. Did you think that was a home run, by the way, when it left the bat?
I did not.
Yeah.
Did you? You were at the
No.
stadium,
I thought it was a
obviously.
lazy fly out. I think Lane Thomas thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Then it kept carrying and carrying. And the pit, like, I didn't think it was a bad pitch either. That at bat was unbelievable.
It was. And, we didn't really talk about, but the Rocchio error, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's trying to turn the double play, but we'll never know, but doesn't matter now. Steve says Yankees are going to win, unfortunately. Height says the Yankees. Wahoo fan, Dodgers and Yankees both good. I like the Yankees offense. Dr. Bryant, Dodgers 3-man rotation being held together with Sergey. I don't know what that means. Corey, realistically, do the Dolans say the team is close and should spend, or does it continue to lack of payroll infusion? I mean, I think we're all going to assume they're not going to spend. But
yeah, that's the safe way to do this.
They will.
And also they're not going to have as much TV revenue as they did with Bally's because it's going to be centralized through MLB. And but I don't care. Like
they have the money. They're not broke. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you have a minority owner who's got a lot of money. Diesel, the team overachieved, but we cannot settle and expect to return here next year. They have to get better to even make the playoffs next year. He's right.
Yeah.
This division is tough. The Royals and we'll see about the Twins, but the Royals and Tigers are ascending teams, both of them. I understand the Royals rotation is, a little older, but like Cole Reagans is not old.
I think the Tigers are going to be fascinating because they have an ownership that has spent money.
Yes.
Over the years. And they've got a young team. Like, they're kind of in a similar situation where if you're the Tigers, like, they're in a little bit of a honeymoon phase just because they were sellers at the deadline. Yeah. No one was in on them. And then you have a season like that. I mean, they're kind of like the 2022 Guardians, honestly.
Yeah.
And if the Tigers can sign a couple free agents, they could be really tough. They have some young players who kind of got their feet wet this year and could be better next year. The Royals are weird because their farm system was so bad that even though they were losing 100 games every year, they weren't like their future wasn't getting that much brighter. So kudos to them for spending money a year ago, and it worked. I don't know how they improve on that though, unless they just spend more. And I don't.
Yeah,
if they do.
Right. They don't have. I mean, obviously, they hit on their best rookie, Bobby Witt Jr., who's one of the best players in baseball. And having Pasquantino, Perez, and Witt is a special, trio there, especially Witt and Perez. But they to some degree got lucky. I mean, Seth Lugo had been a journeyman. He'd been mostly a middle reliever. I always liked him, but I never thought he'd be that good, that he'd be in the Cy Young conversation. And Michael Wacha had a good season for them. So, but all those young pitchers they had have mostly been busts.
But you're right in that even if they regress a little bit, even if the Twins regress, like it's still the White Sox will be horrendous, but like there's not. No, you can't really breathe in this division.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to.
If the Tigers do spend money, they could end up being big favorites in the division potentially because they have. I mean, the only big contract they have is Javi Baez.
Yeah, I mean, let's look. The Tigers lineup is not good. They got a couple nice pieces, but
they don't have any stars. They don't have any stars in that lineup.
Yeah, so I think their pitching will be really good next year, but I'll be curious to see what they do in free agency or making some trades.
I mean, if I were them, I'd go big for, like they need a cleanup hitter in the middle of that lineup.
Yes.
Because they have a lot of like nice hitters to surround a couple of superstars. Like if they all of a sudden added legit 3 and 4 hitters, the rest they have a bunch of guys in the 5, 6, 7, 8 spot who are going to be good, solid hitters there, I think.
Yeah, I like Carpenter. I like Green. Meadows is okay.
Keith's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like Vierling, I don't buy into him, and McKinstry, I don't buy into
Yeah, I
him.
also don't think they can approach 162 games the way they approached the last
No, definitely not. But they won't need.
6
They
weeks.
probably won't need to. I think that was kind of circumstance a little
Yeah.
bit. But some of those young arms like Montero and like there's some they have some really interesting arms. Job, obviously. Let's see. Diesel says we have to sign at least one bona fide power hitter. We cannot make teams pay with singles in October. Yeah, the Guardians did hit a lot more home runs this postseason, than they have in the past years.
Yeah, I don't disagree. They need more offense. I mean,
Oh,
you
100%.
can't. They had Daniel Schneemann and Austin Hedges in the starting lineup
Yeah, right.
for playoff games, but I do think like a full season of Lane Thomas will be fun to
Right.
watch.
Yeah.
That's a
I'm
guy
not
who
saying
could
go ahead.
go like 30-30 if in a peak season.
Sure. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't need more power, but look, we can't make it seem like this was the same offense from the last few years. It was
Yeah,
they
I don't
were
want
a
to see
they
a
were a
Noel
decent power
Brennan.
team.
I don't want to see a Noel Brennan platoon
No,
on
I
opening
want
day.
no, I want a legitimate
Yeah,
right fielder, slugger, like big time power hitter that you could put in the cleanup spot. That's what they need to have. And catcher's going to be interesting because if Bo Naylor becomes the player they thought he was, that he looked like he was becoming at the end of the 23 season, then you're fine with Hedges as the backup. But,
that's a big
I
risk.
know he's a great team guy, but he is the worst hitter I've ever seen. I'm not being mean. It just is.
Yeah, the big question here is, does David Fry, what's his status
Right, right,
next
right.
year?
That's
Right.
true.
So we'll learn this week whether is there surgery involved?
Yeah.
Can he catch again next season?
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of this. Like
Yeah.
if I'm with you, I don't think you can go into next season with just Bo Naylor and Hedges or
No.
someone like that. You
Can't you just add
need.
Hedges to the coaching staff? Is he ready to retire at this point? I mean,
He says he has 7 or 8 more years left in him. I don't. I'm not sure. Not sure how that's possible,
I
but um, you need more offense there, and especially at catcher. Like it's not like Bo Naylor's going to start 150 times behind the plate, even if he has a good year. So
yeah.
it's okay to have a backup catcher who can hit.
Yeah.
If that's Fry, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can live with Hedges or someone like that on the roster too. Like the
Right.
way they did this the first couple months of the season worked great. Hedges
Yeah.
was not overexposed. Fry could bounce around. So yeah, that's a big key. But we'll have to see.
Yeah. You just don't like the problem with Hedges is that there's other holes in the team
Right.
offensively. Like if your lineup is loaded and Hedges is your backup catcher who plays once in a while, well, who cares that he's an automatic out because it's only one spot and the rest of the lineup is great, but that's not the case. Diesel said, no. What's this? Nundo. Adam and Zach, could you guys pick one guy on the roster to extend? Who would it be? Who's your guy? They could extend one player.
Stephen Kwan.
I was just going to say the same thing. I figured you would say the same thing. Yeah. The pitchers, I feel like with pitchers, I'm okay with the recycling they do at pitching and just going to new guys.
Bibby's the one though that I'm, because he got the full year of service time as a rookie.
Yeah.
Because he finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting.
Yeah.
He's only got one more year till arbitration, and then you start
Right.
thinking about all those like that cycle that is just brutal. And I also know like in the spring when they had conversations about an extension, like Bibby's demands were not crazy.
Okay.
They should have met them, and now it's going to cost them more, I'm sure. So
why didn't they do it then?
Because they don't take risks. And a lot of times when they take risks, it doesn't work. And they also, especially with pitchers, like they just don't.
Yeah. They feel like they could keep churning new pitchers.
Correct. But I have questions about that. I mean, they don't have, there's not like the next stud waiting at AAA.
No.
So Kwan's the easy answer. They should have signed him to an extension already too. I mean, he's going to cost so much more than he would have a year or two ago.
Clee 12 says Soto's going to be in New York. Listen, Juan Soto, we all want the Guardians to spend, and they may spend some. Juan Soto's not even worth talking about because he's going to get he might even get more than Ohtani, even though he doesn't pitch because he's younger. I mean, he's only like, what is he, 26?
I think his 26th birthday is Friday, game 1.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get at least $600 million, at least.
Why doesn't a team, like, why does it have to be the Dodgers or Mets or Yankees? Why, like, shouldn't the Cubs build around someone? Shouldn't or even like the Blue Jays or?
It doesn't have to be those 3 teams. I mean, if you're Soto, though, you're playing for the Yankees. I think you'd rather stay there if you're him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, would I love the Cubs to sign Juan Soto? Sure. And they can afford that. Do you know how much money that ownership has made with all the real estate they bought?
I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's always the same 3 teams.
Matthew Boyd, re-signing him?
That's a good question.
I mean, you know what? I listen, I think you could get him cheaply. Who's paying him a lot of money? Nobody.
Yeah, but not as cheaply as you would have thought
Yeah.
a couple of months ago, right? The question is, like, how badly do you want to keep Bieber? And I don't think it could just be one thing. I think they have to trade for like I talked to someone in the organization a couple of weeks ago who we were talking about how kind of this conversation where this has been a great season. Like, how do you build on this? And they were like, we have a lot to figure out with the starting pitching.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I look at the starting pitching right now, Zach, as only, and maybe I shouldn't even say this, but to me, there's 2 short things in the rotation next year: Bybee and Gavin Williams.
And Williams should be like, hey, it's a great situation if we go into next season with him as like the 4 or the 5.
Yeah, I in a perfect situation, Bybee's the 2, Gavin Williams is the 4. Now go, we'll live with whoever you want to, but go get a 1 and a 3. Let's go. Want to bring, I mean, and Bybee may be a 1, but so what? Go get a 1 anyway and have 2 1s. I don't care, but I mean, you got to think about, like, in terms of getting a 1 in free agency. The only pitcher who's a 1 in free agency, well, Garrett Cole and Blake Snell can opt out, but Corbin Burns is a 1. They're not going to sign Corbin Burns.
No, it's got to be a trade.
So it's got to be a trade if they're going to get a 1. So you think, okay, who are the really terrible teams that will look to start over that have controllable pitchers? So who's in that group? I mean, the A's, they don't have anybody.
Well, usually if you're so terrible, it's probably because you don't have that sort of talent.
Right.
I don't know. Crochet?
Would they trade him to the Guardians?
What are they holding on to him for?
I don't know. I have no idea. What else? What other teams are terrible? The Marlins?
The Marlins have good pitching.
Yeah. They were all hurt this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason they were so bad. Who am I forgetting? The Rockies don't have an ace.
It doesn't have to be like a Cy Young contender, but you got to beef up that rotation. You can't have, you get to the playoffs and you look at what they had to do.
Yeah.
And you were going to have Ben Lively starting game 6 at Yankee Stadium against Garrett Cole.
Right.
So, and then Matthew Boyd, who came off his couch in August to join your team.
Yeah.
And was awesome.
Yeah.
But like, that's what you had to resort to. Alex Cobb gave you 5 starts. Like it was really dire. And so, you have decisions to make on McKenzie. You gotta hope Logan Allen is better. You gotta figure out what you want to do with Bieber and Boyd and whoever else.
Lively.
But you can't just assume it's all going to go well. You can't be like, all right, we're going to go into next season with Bybee and McKenzie and Allen and whatnot. No. Make those guys fight for jobs.
That's right.
And build around Bybee and get Gavin Williams back to where he needs to be. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and that's again, it's why they have to be aggressive. You can't assume, and you would think that they've learned that lesson because they've been through this before. I mean, just look at obviously 2022 into 2023 is a good example of this, and they tried to improve and they just completely misfired.
Yep.
But we've seen this before. 2007, they should have won the World Series. And they ran it back a year later, and
Wasn't
they
safe.
stunk.
Yeah.
2013, they make the wild card game, and they ran it back, and they stunk. You can't just assume you're going to be back in the same situation.
Folks, we talked about the Game Time app. If you're looking for tickets to Browns games, to the Cavs who are getting started, concerts, comedy shows, check out the Game Time app. The closer you get to the event, the more prices traditionally go down. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. A few more questions from the fans. Blastgen says Boyd was clutch in the playoffs. Cleve 112. I think Boyd will be out of their price range. Wahoo fan, I agree with Bull. A good evaluation of the summer 24. Roberts is not sure if Jimenez moves over to shortstop or not. I doubt it, but not feeling good about Rocchio. He chokes offensively and defensively with men on base. Listen, he made some errors, but he overall played great in the playoffs. Jimenez, since you talk about bad spending money, and then we'll see what the future holds, but since they have signed him, as great as he is defensively, he's not worth his contract because he's been a below average hitter for 2 years now.
He's worth it so far, but as we've talked about, when he's making 20-some million, and it's not even that, honestly, because I think there are teams that's a drop in the bucket. They'd pay that for he's the best defender in baseball. They'd pay that for that skill. But for your team, where you won't spend more than $100 million, and he's eventually going to be eating up a quarter of that payroll.
Yep.
And getting older, and so the defensive skills tend to decline when you're 30 years old. That could be rough.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This year he only made, $5.6 million.
But yeah, he's worth that still.
Next year it goes to 10.6. Mm-hmm. Okay. 2026 it goes to 15.6, and then 27, 28, and 29 it's 23.6. I mean, those 3 years right now are trending towards disaster.
Yeah, I wonder if I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that they're going to be the ones paying that.
Well, but if they're going to not pay it, they're going to have to trade him probably this offseason.
Or next.
Okay.
Or the year after that. I mean, there are teams that, again, especially if he does show more offensively, there are teams that will see $23 million and be like, that's nothing. Give me the player who's an average offensive hitter and an elite defender.
Right.
But
and on a team where he's batting ninth,
right,
because it's a good lineup, then he's a positive because great defensively, he's not a terrible hitter, but he's below average, but he's batting ninth for us, so we get great defense,
Yeah, and maybe that happens in Cleveland. Maybe beef up the lineup enough. Maybe Bonek.
That would be nice. I mean, in a perfect world, yes.
Yeah.
Blastron says power hitter is all we need. Wahoo fan, Matthew Boyd was very good against the Tigers and Yankees. Clee 112, trade for Rooker, 3 years of control and can mash. Yeah, I'm down with that. I like Brent Rooker.
We'll have to have the Josh Naylor conversation at some point too.
Yeah.
I think I know how you feel, but Manzardo could be your first baseman. Yeah, I mean, he no matter what happens with Naylor, he's got 1 year left on his deal, or of team control, and Manzardo's the long-term option there. So Rooker, not a good defender. Also, who cares? He's an excellent hitter.
Yeah,
and that's what you'd be getting him for. But also, if you have the DH spot open, then it's easier to incorporate him too. He was my top guy at the trade deadline. I thought they should go after. I never understand what Oakland is doing, or Sacramento
so weird
is doing. I can't imagine any player is excited about going to play in Sacramento in front of like small gatherings every night at a minor league stadium. So he's going to be 30 years old. I don't know why you're keeping him. I could go on forever about this guy. I think he's the perfect trade target and would be great in the middle of the order.
He only had about 300 major league at bats before 2023. So he didn't really establish himself in the majors until the age of 28. And then in 2023, he had 30 homers, And this past year, 39 homers, 112 ribbies, and a 927 OPS, playing in a pitcher's park or with a bad lineup. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean,
It doesn't cost you anything, and that financially, like that's why, again, like it's not even so much about it's not the payroll, it's the flexibility, and it's you can add talent without. If you're an owner, like you have to get uncomfortable at times.
yeah.
Whether you're Paul Dolan or you're Steve Cohen, like you have to get out of your comfort zone and take some risks if you're ever going to want to win a title.
Well,
But you don't even have to break the bank
no.
to upgrade your team. So we'll see.
Think about how excited we and the fans would be if they forget free agency, didn't spend a dime in free agency, but made trades for Garrett Crochet and Brent Rooker. Like, you seriously upgrade your team. Those are just what you need. That's like an ace pitcher and a big time power hitter. And they're big, and you didn't spend any free agent dollars. You gave up whatever, 4, 5, 6, 7 prospects. I don't care. I'm sick of hearing about prospects. Go get guys who have proven themselves in the majors. And you know how excited those two guys playing for the crappy teams they're playing for would love to be on this team?
Yeah. And look, prospects are important. The health of the farm system is important, especially for this team. But the narrative I'm really tired of hearing about, and there are many, that they have the youngest roster in baseball.
Yeah, I don't care.
Had it, like 3 straight years?
Right.
That's not something it's something to puff your chest about the first year because they won the division and, no one saw that coming 2 years ago. But the third year in a row, like it's not, you're not winning an award for this. You're not raising a banner that said youngest team in baseball 3 straight years.
Yeah.
The point is that because you have the youngest team in baseball, you can keep it together and you can build off of it. And so, yeah, it's good to have a healthy farm system so that down the line, when this window ends, you have talent ready to replenish your roster. But having some 19-year-old excelling right now in A-ball is not going to help the 2025 Guardians unless it helps in the way of a trade. So, yeah, you have to be aggressive. This is the time to make deals and sacrifice some of that prospect talent for immediate help.
It's going to be an interesting season next year for Emmanuel Clase.
Yeah.
After his disastrous postseason, the whole Instagram thing was strange. In fact, I saw a clip from a podcast. I don't know if you saw this. It was Vinny Pasquantino. I don't know I think it might be his podcast. I can't even remember who he was talking to. Oh, he was talking to Mason Miller of the A's. And they were talking about Clase's Instagram post.
Huh.
Like, Pasquantino was like, that was weird, wasn't it? And they were talking about how they're like, he's nasty, but it seemed like he's lost his confidence. Like that was so bizarre. And so, as much as the fans have nothing but poured love for Emmanuel Clase, but in a way, I think going into next season, it's like, well, call me in the postseason. That's
part of this. The honeymoon phase ends.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like that 2017 season, obviously 2016 postseason, like that is the only time in history probably where a team can blow a 3-1 lead in the World Series. And while fans are frustrated and the rain delay will eat at them forever, and they never want to see Anthony Rizzo or Kyle Schwarber hear from Joe Buck ever again, like there's a little bit of understanding because that team was on complete fumes. No one expected them to get there. They were missing so many key players. And then 2017 happens and it's like, okay, there's no more excuses.
Right.
So, and they got off to it. They really were sleepwalking through most of that season until the 22-game winning streak. And that got everybody revved up again.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that honeymoon phase it ends. Like there's no extending it to a second season because your expectations change individually and as a team. Like Jose Ramirez, we can have plenty of conversations next year about how great of a player he is and how well-rounded, but every single one is going to come with the caveat of we're all still waiting for him to carry the team in October, and that hasn't happened yet.
And this year, more like he hasn't been great in the playoffs, period. But this year it really stood out more. Like, I don't think anybody was holding it against him before this year. And now it feels like it will be throughout the next season.
And I think it stood out more because it wasn't like he was lost. I actually think he was in a good rhythm at the plate. I mean, he had no 800 OPS in the playoffs. You would never realize that. And some home runs prop that up. But it's because he hit a couple home runs. It's because he hit a few doubles. It's because he was drawing a ton of walks. It got intentionally walked 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, that fear factor is there. It's everybody knows this is some superstar player, but he didn't, like, Soto, Judge, and Stanton all delivered just back-breaking home runs. I mean, Stanton felt like all of his were to put the Yankees ahead or to erase a deficit. And Ramirez hits a home run in the 9th when they're down 4. And he had plenty of opportunities with Quan and Rocchio on base and just couldn't deliver that one moment where everybody around the world is like, oh, that's the guy that they say is so underrated.
And he's not underrated at this point, I don't think. But I think that was it. You nailed it right there. It's that we have held up Jose as he's our superstar. He's as good as the other superstars. He just doesn't get the credit because he plays for Cleveland. And then in the biggest series against the big bad Yankees, their superstars showed up and they made our superstar look small, both physically and emotionally and everything, every way. And that ultimately is, so it's going to be an interesting season, but well, that's for another day. We will be back with an Ultimate Guardian show at some point in the next week or two to kind of do more of a preview for the offseason. I know you said, Zach, that there's some exit interviews this week, and so we'll get some thoughts from you on that. What's that process like for those who may be interested?
Well, they cleaned out their lockers Sunday morning and early afternoon, so it's like I think most guys probably had a flight out Sunday to go home wherever they live, and
they didn't stick around to watch the Browns, huh?
No, that's why you got Flava Flav trying to break the guitar, and that didn't go well. No, and then so they'll they do like debriefs with everybody too, and then the coaches all get together with the front office and they'll sort through a ton of stuff. Which coaches are coming back, which players need maybe some procedures done. I don't think they have any like players with options you're going to have to figure out Bieber. Like, I guess you could offer him the qualifying offer.
Yeah.
So like little paperwork type stuff.
Yeah.
And then we'll meet with Stephen Vogt, Chris Antonetti, and Mike Chernoff during the week. And it's usually like an hour and a half of just debriefing about everything, looking ahead. And then it's the off season.
Yeah.
It hits you fast. You're going 100 miles an hour every single day, and you don't know when it's going to end. And then, as Terry Francona always used to say, and then you just slam into a brick wall that wasn't there a few seconds ago.
That's right. We did get a super chat from Drastic651. He says, Bull and Zach, do the Guardians have a Troject? Trojekt. Is this the thing that the Yankees had? Special AI.
I don't know if they had that specific one.
Yeah.
There was also the one called it was like the Mike Tyson or something. I don't remember why it was called that. But most teams have like it's like the batting practice machine that just you can set it up so that it looks like whichever pitcher you're going to face.
Yeah.
So if you're facing Garrett Cole, it'll throw you his pitches from his arm slot.
Right.
Most teams have that. I don't know off the top of my head what specific equipment the Guardians have.
Well, stay tuned for tweets about when we'll be back on. Again, something either later this week or next week, previewing the offseason and recapping the exit interviews with the front office. And then as news breaks during the offseason, we will be with you and we'll have shows, so look out for that. John, we'll read the last message. Says, I appreciate you, Bull and Zach. It's been a great season that has gone beyond my wildest expectations for them. Now expectations are high for next season. Let's go. Thanks for all the hard work. Everybody saying thank you. We appreciate the support, everybody. Zach, it's been fun. And we'll do a lot less shows during the off season, but then we'll be back again at least once a week, if not twice a week next season, doing this again. But we'll see you either later this week or next week. Until then, everybody have a great day, great week on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show.